As we start this scripture, I want to encourage you to be looking this up in your Bible. There's a Bible in the pew in front of you, on your phone, as long as you can honestly say that your phone won't distract you. But while we get ready to do that, I want us to think for a second. There are those of us in this room that what we love is a chance to create. Like, let's say that you are moving into a new place. Hypothetically, Wayne. Let's say you're moving into a new place and you're like, okay, what's the furniture going to be? There are some of us in this room right now that what we hate, maybe above all, is a blank wall in a room. We're like, it needs decorations, painting, something, right? Some of you, what you would love is a yard. Okay, let's be honest. As we drove last weekend to visit my parents, there are a few places along I-80 as we go west where there are houses that are built and it's like an acre or two of yard and there's nothing in the yard. There aren't trees, there's nothing. And I'm like, I'm not a big landscaper guy, but I'm like, somebody's got to fill that yard with something. How many of you are bothered by that? You're like, oh, it's got to be decorated, right? We all have areas like that. But what about an empty life? What do you fill an empty life with? I remember that feeling as our son Benjamin, our firstborn, as we drove home. I remember thinking, okay, this is a blank canvas that God is going to write on, that we as parents are going to have a lot of impact on. But really, if you think about it, every day is like that, right? Every day you wake up and you're like, okay, this is a blank life to write on. And in this book of Ecclesiastes, that's basically the question that Solomon asks. How do you fill an empty life? What's life about? And we're going to spend a couple months walking through this with him. Now, let's start at verse 1. He says, the words of the teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem. Now, it doesn't actually say who wrote this, but we know that it says the word of the teacher, which basically means a gatherer of knowledge and a gatherer of people. The Hebrew word, if you're into this, is koholeth, which basically means he's saying, I'm a teacher and I'm a gatherer of knowledge, and I'm going to give you my wisdom. And he says he's the son of David. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's Solomon, because in that society, you might say, oh, that's a true son of David, and it might be a few generations down. So it tends to lean in the idea that it's King Solomon of Israel. It does say that he was king in Jerusalem. And we do know that in 1 Kings chapter 3, Solomon has become king, and God basically appears to him in a dream and says, what do you want? How do you want me to bless you? And Solomon responds not by saying, I want millions of dollars. Solomon doesn't say, even though he's at this point in his life probably a teenage guy, he doesn't say, I want to be the kind of guy that, the teenage girls say, I want rock hard abs. And no, that isn't what he asks for. He says, I want to be wise. And God responds by saying, because you have asked for this and you haven't asked for everything else, I will give you all of that. And God blesses him. And at this point, as we're going to see as we study through this book, Solomon is towards the end of his life. And he's saying, I lived my life, and this is what I've learned. And you have to understand what we know about this guy. I mean, we know that basically he says in this, I have had so much money that I couldn't even spend it all. How many of us say, that's true for me? No matter what I do, I can't spend all this money. If that's you, we need to talk, because I have church-related suggestions. And we do know that he was considered the wisest man in that part of the world. We know that he had 700 wives and 300 concubines. Now, I'm not sure how that fits into wise, but still, I mean, in terms of pleasure and money and wisdom and everything, he had all the stuff. He was, I heard it said, he was like Albert Einstein, Bill Gates, and Brad Pitt all rolled into one. And we're going to spend several weeks here basically listening to him say, you think this will satisfy you? I've tried that. I've been there. You want to try this? I've been there. Verse 2, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. Now, I do want to teach you one Hebrew word today because you have to understand this to understand the whole book. Everybody say Hevel. 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 Okay, that means, well, meaningless, but it's more than that. It's smoke. It's breath. It's a wisp. It's a vapor. It's emptiness. It's something you can't hold on to. Maybe the best picture of this is go home this afternoon, get a big bucket of water or a small bucket of water, big enough for your hand to go into, and stick your hand in that bucket, pull your hand out, and then look at that, and the impact that your hand leaves is Hevel. For a moment, there'll be something, but it will go away. Isn't this cheerful? There is hope out of this, but he says meaningless. And now, literally, it's Hevel and then Hevels, like plural. He's like meaninglesses. And then he says, utterly meaningless basically means, well, another way to say this is breaths. breathy breaths. And he's saying it's nothing. It's the same word used in Psalm 144, verse 3 and 4, that says, "O Lord, what is man that you regard him, or the son of man that you think of him? Man is like a breath, a Hevel. His days are like a passing shadow." Another way to think about this is, you know that feeling when you come home and you smell that something has been cooking in the house, and it's chocolate chip cookies. And you're like, that's wonderful. And you go running in, and chocolate chip cookies is apparently what they do when you're selling a house. When you have an open house, people put cookies in there to smell that. But let's say you come in and you realize that, you see the cookie jar, you reach into the cookie jar, and there's nothing there. Maybe a few crumbs. Or even worse, you go to your wife and she says, "Oh yeah, I made chocolate chip cookies there for an event at work tomorrow." That's just cruel. That's Hevel. The wanting of something that isn't there. And it means two things. One is it means temporary. If it's smoke, smoke is there. It's really there, but it's temporary. It goes away. And it's also ungraspable. You can't capture it. And the Word of God is saying everything is like that. Now, I do want to tell you as we start into this book is evangelistically powerful. If you know somebody that doesn't follow Jesus, that doesn't know the Lord, this is a great book to take them into. Now, that might not make sense to you because you're like, no, we don't want to tell them that life is meaningless. But see, as Christians, a lot of the time, I think we are answering questions that people aren't asking. We're answering questions that people aren't asking. But this question of the meaning of life, of why am I here? What am I pursuing? This is a question that people are asking. They have always been asking, and they will always ask. I mean, you want to see proof? Back decades ago, the Byrds wrote a song. Actually, Pete Seeger wrote it. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn. And it's about this. It's from this book. Because people are asking it. And even better song, Kansas, the band, wrote a song, and actually Kerry Livgren, who wrote it, was searching for God at this point in his life. And he said, all we are is dust in the wind. He wasn't a follower of Jesus yet. He hadn't been gripped by Christianity. He did later. But he was like, I feel like dust in the wind. U2 wrote a song that was epic, entitled, I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For. That's what Hevel is. What is graspable? What lasts? And verse 3 goes on and he says, what do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? Now, key phrase here is under the sun. In the Old Testament worldview and the way they used words, under the sun was very much a statement of in this world. Like if we were to exclude everything supernatural and just focus on our five senses, that's under the sun. And he says, what do people gain from all their toil under the sun? He's asking, everything we try to fill life with, entertainment, pleasure, fun, money, sex, power, popularity, all that kind of stuff, what is that? He says it's Hevel. It's the life we experience in this world. If we don't look beyond this world, under the sun, if we ignore the spiritual world, all the stuff of this world is Hevel. And the reason I tell you that this is an evangelistically powerful book is because very often the first step from doubt is nihilism, which basically means hopelessness. It's empty. And we have run around as Christians very often telling people, no, you know what? Well, before we go there, Acts chapter 17, Paul is speaking in Athens, and he says, God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heavens and earth and does not live in temples built by human hands. And he is not served by human hands as if he needed anything. He's saying, don't look at this stuff. There are so many churches that are telling people, if you seek God, God will give you stuff. God will make you healthy and wealthy. And Paul says, if we focus on this earth, we're not going to get people to turn to God. So, we think that if we can give scientific proof, well, is salvation through scientific proof? No, salvation, according to Ephesians, is by grace through faith. Ultimately, some of us have really studied the science, and there are reasons to say, oh, it's cool, it's exciting to see scientific evidence for God. But I think most of us know that there's a limit to that. You can't prove it. Ultimately, it's faith. The other way that we do it sometimes is we appeal to people's selfishness. I mean, oh, if you follow God, everything will be great. You know who else took that approach? The serpent in the garden. He said, if you eat this apple or this fruit, everything in your life will be great. There's something that God doesn't want you to have. It's selfishness. It's appeal to what we want. So what the serpent said was Eve and Adam, who was there with her, he says, don't think about God. Think about Hevel, what's under the sun. Verse 4, generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. Have you ever looked at your parents' yearbook? Or if you're over the age of about 50, have you ever looked at your own yearbook and said, wow, we really thought that looked good? I mean, I'm from the generation, if you pull out my senior yearbook, you will see guys with the parted hair, with the feathered hair on, and it was like a wall of hair, the Sean Cassidy thing. And don't laugh, ladies, you had this thing going on. The Killer Bangs thing, the Farrah Fawcett Major thing. And some of us were wearing parachute pants. Fortunately, that wasn't in my senior picture. That didn't show up. But it just shows us that every generation thinks we've got this figured out. You know, and it goes away. It goes away. Generations come and go, but the earth remains forever. Verse 5, the sun rises and the sun sets and hurries back to where it rises. He's saying life flies by. I love the quote. It's so true at this point in my life that the days crawl, but the years fly, don't they? Days can be so long, but the years fly by and you look and you're like, where did it go? I mean, Solomon is being so honest here. I remember the day after I finished high school. And honestly, I was kind of a big deal in my school. I was kind of big man on campus. And I went back the next day, and it was all going on without me. And when I was back in town for my 5th high school reunion, I went back and I visited the school. And you know what? Nobody of the students remembered me. Water in the bucket. And Solomon says it all just flies by. And there's also this sense in which he's saying it's repetition. It's just the same old thing over and over and over again. I mean, in the musical Annie, we get hope from the sun will come out tomorrow. Why is she saying that? Because life is gonna go on. And tomorrow, we may put hope in tomorrow, but part of what Solomon is talking about here, and we'll see this over the course of the book, is if this isn't depressing enough already, he will say, and then you're gonna die. Wow, this is just really encouraging, isn't it? The wind blows to the south and turns to the north. Round and round it goes, ever returning on its course. It's repetition again, right? I mean, you ever notice that the weatherman or the weather woman nowadays, I think because men are shallow and, we really want to apparently, Anyway, you never hear them say, yeah, it's windy today, but you know what? We found out that the wind is done. It's all blown out, and there's not going to be wind again. That's not going to happen. It's going to keep coming around. It's going to be repetition. It's almost like if you go to the health club and you get on a treadmill and you run really fast to go nowhere. I do the elliptical, which means I'm doing even more to go nowhere. Verse 7, all the streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, there they return again. Now, he's not saying that this life and this world doesn't matter. He's saying that if you try to find meaning just in the stuff of this world, it won't work. It won't work. We pursue things to fill the emptiness, but it's never enough. It's like he's saying life is Groundhog Day, the movie. The alarm goes off, you get up, you go to work, you work hard, you have lunch, and probably there's only 3 or 4 different lunches you ever have. And then you have lunch and you work with the same people and you say the same things and you laugh at the same jokes or pretend to laugh at them, and you get in the car and you drive home and you have dinner, and one of the biggest challenges is trying to find something different to eat tonight. And you watch TV in order to escape from the boredom that is life, or you go on social media so you can be depressed by other people's fake presentation of their life, and you go to bed later than you planned and you wake up and do it again. We want more money, more pleasure. Our spouse isn't good enough. Our kids aren't good enough. Our job isn't good enough. Our friends aren't good enough. Our self isn't good enough. And now there are people that might say, well, my life is better, though. You know how discontented we tend to be? Find yourself for a moment in the Garden of Eden. God has created this beautiful, amazing place and said to Adam and Eve, it's yours. Eat whatever you want, enjoy this beautiful paradise, but there's one thing that I want you to stay away from. And no matter how much we have, we want that next thing. Anybody else see this in your own heart? And in case you think that you've broken this thing, this endless repetition, verse 9 says, what has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. Every generation thinks they've got it figured out. The 60s, those of you who grew up in the 60s, right? It was all about free love and you do you, and now we're back to that same thing. And in the 80s, we were all about, looking out for number one. That's the solution. Now we seem to think that AI is going to be the answer. And some of us say, that's why we need to go back to the way things used to be. But that's not what this passage says, is it? He's saying, I've been there. It wasn't that good in the first place. The novelty will wear off. So we've invented social media where we try to get more and more people to hear us, to see us, to listen to us, to validate us. But they couldn't listen to everyone before, and now we have even more things coming at us. And if you think that other people on Facebook or Snapchat or TikTok or Instagram are gonna fill the empty void in your life, you're wrong. There's nothing new. I want a new car, a new house, a new job, a new friend, a new school, a new spouse. It's Hevel. Verse 10, is there anything of which one can say, look, this is something new? It was here already, long ago. It's just a variation, really, of what came before. And then he reaches the peak or the valley in verse 11. No one even remembers the former generations, and even those yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow them. This is cheerful, isn't it? Don't you want him to fix it? Don't you want him to give us a pat answer? But if we skip ahead to verse 15, which we'll look at next week, Solomon writes this: what is crooked cannot be straightened. What is lacking cannot be counted. Can't be fixed under the sun. But as we prepare to go to the table, to go to communion, I want to give you a tip of where this will end up eventually. The answer can't be found under the sun. And even if you know that, as Christians, we are so tempted to believe that I need Jesus and more of this. I need to walk with God and a little more money. I need a little bit more Hevel. Here's what the Bible says. We have a problem. Sin separates us from God and separates us from everything else. And if you look at the curses in Genesis 3, after Adam and Eve sin, God says, everything else is Hevel. He says, wives, you're going to have a rough time in childbirth. And I know there are many women that will say, childbirth was not as hard as the next 18 years, the next 40 years. And he says, women, you're going to try to find meaning in this man, but he's trying to find meaning. That's not going to work. And he says, men, you're going to work hard. And I don't want to see it stuck in the genders of this. He's basically saying, you are going to try to find meaning in life, and it's not going to be found under the sun. Soren Kierkegaard said, and I like Kierkegaard, he said some things that I'm like, throw that away. But he said that ultimately sin is our attempt to build our self-worth, our meaning, our purpose on anything other than God. The good news is that the God who is not limited to under the sun hears our cry. In Exodus chapter 3, when Moses sees the burning bush and God speaks to him, you know what God says? God says, I have heard the cry of my people, and I care, and I have come. The God who transcends all of this says, I love you and I care about you. I will give you purpose. God who isn't limited to under the sun comes down in the form of Jesus. And it's crazy, because think about it. There's an unwed, pregnant teenage girl. In our society, that's Hevel. And then she has a baby. And, you know, we all love babies. Well, most of us do. But ultimately, babies are, I mean, let's face it, your babies are way cuter than anybody else's, right? They're Hevel. The baby was born in Bethlehem. Bethlehem was an unimportant city, kind of in the middle of nowhere, in a nowhere backwoods country. Bethlehem was Hevel. But the God who is not under the sun says, I can take Hevel and fill it. And that's why everything else that we try to fill our lives not only doesn't work, it distracts us from that which does. And we're going to dig into this book. But here's what I want you to know. Hevel comes from sin. It comes from our desire to fill with something. But Jesus on the cross defeated sin.